Greetings and salutations, it is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host, who might be a criminal clown. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels throughout Gotham City once again. Today I want to talk about a graphic novel comic book that I just read, since I'm into that comic book grind right now. In the past, I've talked about Batman Year One, which is about Batman's rookie times as a crime fighter, and I've also read The Long Halloween, which was about Batman and Harvey Dent and Jim Gordon's fight against the mob. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about Batman today, beginning with one of my first comic books that I own now. I've never bought comic books before, but here I am. I have bought two. What's the other one? I'll tell you near the end of the video. But the one that I will be talking about today is The Man Who Laughs, by Ed Brubaker, Doug Mahnke, Patrick Zircher, and Aaron Sowd. I don't know if I pronounced those right, but hopefully I did. So this, I don't know if these people are super popular in the comic book industry or if they're hated pariahs, as is the case with some writers. But for what it's worth, this is pretty good, so they must be doing something right. Based on what it says in their biography section in here, they've been in the comic books business for a long while, writing for both DC and Marvel, so they have plenty of experience under their belt. And this is The Man Who Laughs. Got a nice picture of the Joker doing his evil smile, and so this, and it tells you all you need to know, that this is a story about the Joker, which for those that don't know, Joker's Batman villain, but also this is sort of a sequel to Year One, kind of, but not really. It takes place, shortly after Batman and Jim Gordon have sort of teamed up at this point, where all the animosity aside, Gordon recognizes that Batman is a force for good, and now because they've taken on the criminals, they think they got a hold on things, but woe and behold, here is a super criminal come to do super criminal things. How is that going to turn out? We will find out. Without further ado, let's do a little summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. Before I begin, I just want to point out I'll put various images from the comic book throughout this video, because this is a visual format, and it is going to be pretty important to see what's going on, because it's an interesting looking comic book. The Man Who Laughs begins with Batman and Jim Gordon reflecting on where they're at right now, and so they have a successful relationship going. They're able to take down most criminals, and that's taking care of some of the crime in Gotham. However, Jim Gordon happens upon a crime scene where the villains have been mutilated in very grotesque ways with weird smiles, and just ugliness abounds. And so it looks like there's something more serious in Gotham now, and so Batman and Jim Gordon are trying to figure out what that is. At this time, Bruce Wayne is at a party with some other people, and on TV a person wearing a clown costume appears and reveals himself to be the Joker, and he says he's going to make Gotham pay for various stuff that they have done to him. He doesn't really specify what that is, and he basically marks one of the partygoers as a future target, and so Batman heads down to Arkham Asylum, which is abandoned at this point, and because that's where the signal is coming from, but the Joker is long gone by then. Because the guy at the party was marked for death, Batman like Batman and Jim Gordon protect him, but in the midst of the protection, Joker managed to give him his laughing gas toxin sort of thing, and so he dies of like a horrible disfigurement, and so like Batman and Jim Gordon have to figure out how that's happening. While Joker marks another rich person for like death, and Batman eventually figures out that like these people are connected in some way to the Ace Chemicals factory, and it makes him think of the Red Hood, a villain who popped up recently as possibly as a response to Batman, who wore a red hood and who he chased through the Ace Chemicals factory, but the Red Hood fell into a vat of chemicals. And so like Batman wasn't able to get him, and he thought he was dead, but maybe the person who was the Red Hood at that time wasn't quite dead. Joker manages to get the second person that he's targeted, and then he ups the ante by targeting a judge and also Bruce Wayne. Joker doesn't know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, so how could he know that targeting Bruce Wayne is that big of a mistake? He doesn't, and so he's just like, let's do this. And so on the night where this happens, the Joker sends some of his goons to target the clown, or some of the judge, and Bruce Wayne manages to get around the poisoning by just injecting himself with some of the laughing poison toxin thing, which causes him to have hallucinations and sort of imagine his parents dying again while Gotham watches, and he sort of gets in the mindset that this is Gotham's fault, and he realizes that's exactly what Joker is thinking. That's what his mindset. He wants to punish Gotham for his accident at the Ace Chemicals factory, and he wants to make everyone feel the same as him. And so Batman deduces that Joker must be trying to poison the reservoir with his toxin as a way to disfigure everyone and get them laughing themselves to death. Batman manages to race Joker to the reservoir, and Joker's like, it's too late, I'm already going to do it. But before he can release it into the viaduct that leads into the reservoir, Batman blows up the viaduct, which is kind of a weird thing, because Joker acknowledges like that's going to cripple Gotham for a couple weeks because they're not going to have access to fresh water. And Batman's like, yeah, better to cripple Gotham than to completely destroy it. And I'm not sure that's sound logic right there, because people are gonna go thirsty, and there's gonna be a lot of problems without that fresh water. But that's beside the point right there. Batman manages to beat up Joker because Joker attacks him, and the comic shows him making the conscious choice not to kill Joker, even though Joker is a murderer at this point, and killing him might be saving Gotham in some sort of way. And whether or not killing Joker, that's a big discussion about whether you should kill Joker. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I would love talk about it in the comments, and make a video about it or something like that, because it's always interesting to think about, should Batman kill Joker, someone irredeemable and who's always going to kill even more people? It's a great question about the role of responsibility with superheroing, and also says something about the death penalty in the process. So that's where the story ends there. Joker is in prison, and Batman and Jim Gordon reflect on how there is some success with defeating some of the super criminals who are rising up through the ranks, and they also unveil the bat signal. So Batman is officially a public figure rather than the myth he was in the Year One saga. And then in addition to this, there's also an additional story called Made of Wood that I'm not really going to go into. It's just about a crime happening in Gotham that's related to the Green Lantern of the 1940s, and so Batman and him try to solve the crime. I'm not a big fan of the story, but I think some people might be interested in it based on how it's more detective focused. again, I wasn't a fan, but it's an interesting story, and so I'm sure in addition to The Man Who Laughs, it'd be worth checking out. So in terms of analysis, there's a few things that I want to talk about here. The first is how this story represents an evolution of Batman villains. At least in the chronology of Batman's history, because prior to this, he was fighting the mob. He was fighting lower level criminals. He was fighting rapists and assaulters and various corrupt cops. But this story is a change because now he's fighting people who are somewhat on his level. Joker's not particularly skilled in combat or anything like that, or he doesn't have powers, but he's willing to go to the next level, like Batman, to accomplish what he wants to do. Because Batman exists, he's as Gordon pointed out in The Long Halloween, that's bringing out different types of criminals who might otherwise not exist in Gotham. They see Batman as a challenge to overcome, or they see him as an infuriation that must be resolved by bringing in the incredibly powerful people or incredibly crazy people. So you see that the Joker's more heinous than the mob, and it's requiring more skill, more detective work, more patience and skill on the part of the Batman to solve this crime and to address the problem at hand. Another thing that I really like is how Batman and Joker are a kind of reflection of one another. I don't think that Joker is Batman's greatest rival in terms of reflection. A lot of media tries to present it that way, but I don't think that's completely true. But in a lot of ways, they are good reflections because Batman represents a need for order, a need for reducing the criminal underworld in Gotham, while Joker represents chaos and a spread of that disorder to the point where it's going to destroy most or all of Gotham. And I really like how the authors do that there and paint a picture of this duality, sort of, where you have Batman and Joker and they're complete opposites, but they also reflect what the other wants, and they can't really both exist at once, sort of battling for the soul of Gotham there. They both, something that's interesting is how they both seem to blame Gotham for their origins. Joker blames Gotham because he fell into the Ace Chemicals vat, which wouldn't necessarily kill him, but or maim him in any sort of way, but he was flushed out of the chemical factory and left in the sort of Gotham bay, which was already heavily polluted because of several billionaires just not following regulations. So, in a lot of ways, he blames Gotham because their inability to, hold billionaires accountable, their inability to hold anyone accountable, and probably their inability to, not provide for the underprivileged, that led to the Joker's origins. And so he blames Gotham for that, and he wants Gotham to suffer like that. Batman is similar in that he blames Gotham for the death of his parents. It might just be Joe Chill who was responsible for the death of his parents, and that was kind of acknowledged in year one. He blames the Gotham underbelly in some way. But Batman is different in that he believes that only the underworld needs to be addressed. He just needs to get rid of crime, and then Gotham will be great again. Make Gotham great again. So he doesn't go as far as the Joker, but I will say it's pretty dangerous to have that line of thinking because, Batman is just one probable cause incident away from beating up a child, at least from what it seems like. He blames Gotham, but he doesn't 100% blame it. But it's still enough that he's going to do some pretty terrible stuff to get his man. Luckily, he stopped short of killing the Joker, but maybe that makes problems worse for Gotham because he's not willing to solve a problem as it comes head on. But that's a different discussion entirely. The last thing I want to talk about is the art style is interesting in this comic book. I particularly like the hallucination art from when Batman is under the influence of the toxin. How you see, like what I'm about to show you, how you see like all the smiles and the grotesque view of Gotham, and in the buildings you see various eyes that are like Joker's eyes, and so it's like it's very beautiful and scary. I also like how Joker is written. Not written, but drawn. Like, a lot of the times his art is very ugly, and they're not trying to make Joker out to be, like, a cool dude. He's an ugly monster man who does ugly monster man things, and you're not supposed to sympathize with him. He's one of the few Batman villains where, like, oh, yeah, he's complete garbage dude. You shouldn't sympathize with him at all. You should view him as the gutter trash monster man that he is, and I think they do a wonderful job with highlighting. So that's a point for it. But most of the other art, it doesn't sit well with me. It feels less complex than The Long Halloween or Year One. I think that's more with my own taste. So again, like I can't fault this comic book for not completely adhering to what I want out of the design. And I feel like I'm going to be talking more about this kind of thing, like with art style, as I review more comic books, and it feels like a weird thing to have to constantly address. But if that's what's in comic books, I have to talk about that. So yeah, I would say it's all right. There's a lot of good with the art style, but it didn't 100% sit well with me. And so if you're like me, that's important to know. And if you're not like me and you like various different art styles, maybe this is more to your fancy. Those were my thoughts on The Man Who Laughs, and also to some extent Made of Wood, which is a fun story, but I cared more about The Man Who Laughs. Overall, I would say I strongly recommend reading this story, just because it's a fun origin story for Batman's conflict with the Joker, and it's worth reading about and worth considering, like all the issues that it brings up, and the questions it raises about Batman and the Joker's relationship. So absolutely go find it if you can. I'm glad I bought this because it's I'm glad that I'm starting a comic book collection, and this is a good one to start with. As I mentioned before, I do have another one that I will be talking about in the near future. That is A Death in the Family, which for some of you may know, some of you may not know, is the Batman comic book where Robin dies. Which isn't that much of a spoiler because, Robin's dead on the cover. And also, that it's famous because this was decided by the fans. So, you pretty much knew going in that Robin was going to die. How does he die? Well, that remains to be seen, but much like with this story, it's connected to the Joker in some way. Can't wait to talk about that. If you have anything to say about this specific story, or if you want me to cover a specific comic book in the future, be sure to comment below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about all sorts of things like this. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My Twitter account, I haven't mentioned this yet, but you can follow me at Around the Weird. It's the name of my channel. Always great to talk and hang out and talk about books with people, so that'll be really groovy. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird travels. Please don't poison the Gotham City reservoir.